So this is the season of fireflies, or as they're often called in the South, lightning bugs. They started up a few weeks ago, I noticed, on the summer solstice, right on schedule in my neighborhood at least, when at twilight they began rising up and blinking softly. So here's some trivia you might not know. Fireflies are actually beetles, and they use their flashes as mating signals. You might have known that already. The flashes that we see out in the yard are generally males that are looking for females. It's kind of like teenage boys driving around in fast cars thinking that makes them more attractive, or middle-aged men doing the same thing. Anyway, as the male lights up, flying around, if a female firefly waiting in the grass or bushes is impressed by that display of firefly manliness, she responds back with a flash of her own. And they engage in this twinkling conversation until the male locates the female and, well, there is one type of firefly, however, that's kind of vicious. The females of this species will mimic the flashing patterns of another firefly species, and so when an unsuspecting male is lured close to her, she reaches out and grabs it and eats it. The law of the jungle, or at least the law of the front yard. Now for us, fireflies are beautiful, they're magical. A few summers ago, Elle and I were out walking early one night. It had just started getting dark, and suddenly she stopped and grabbed my arm, and she said, "Look." Ahead of us was this large grassy area, and the air was just alive with fireflies. There was something just really happy about that. We stood there for a few minutes, just staring in wonder, just glad to be alive, to witness that simple beauty in that moment. It might sound corny, but it really made both of us feel very hopeful. You know, as a kid, I used to catch fireflies in a mason jar to get a better look at them up close. But it was always a crime to keep them very long. You needed to let them go back out, to fly into the darkness, and to light things up. I think that's why, as silly as it might sound, the glow of a firefly feels to me like hope. It's a light in the darkness, and even the darkness can't overcome it. It's a lot like that passage we read every Christmas from the book of Isaiah. And it reminds me of what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." Light and love and hope, they all go together. When the Apostle Paul wrote his majestic letter to the Romans, one truth among the many marvelous things he told them was, in hope we're saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what is seen? Paul must have known a few things about human nature, that most of us are seeking something. Most of us feel as if we are works in progress. We all want completeness and wholeness because in that there's peace and stability. Now, one way to speak of that using religious language is the word salvation. Paul says, in hope we are saved. Now, the idea of being saved, as Paul describes it, really is not exactly what a lot of us might conjure up at first. Over the years, being saved came to mean that you got to go to heaven because you believed certain things. At least, that's exactly what I grew up thinking that word meant. But my understanding of that word is much broader now. And I think it comes a lot closer to what Paul meant when he talked about being saved. The Greek word that Paul uses is sozo, and it's a synonym for words like whole and complete and worthy and healed up. So in that sense, being saved is not so much about your permanent home address after you die. It's about your state of being and mind and heart in the life that you have now, today, in this moment. And Paul says that way of being is found in hope. Living with hope is the same thing as being saved. And I have to agree, the people I've known who have been the unhappiest and the most broken and feeling the most as if they were unworthy and incomplete have been those lacking in hope. I think that's why, over the past 4 or 5 months, with all that we've been through in dealing with COVID, we have yearned so much for a sense of and the reality of healing and wholeness and completeness. We need hope, just the smallest glimmer of hope, that things will be okay. We need to feel hope. We need to feel saved. And I believe it's why that in this same season of distress and change, so many people of every race and creed and color have poured onto the streets and cried out for justice. I think it's why we can all finally say and understand that it is not a political statement to affirm that Black lives matter. It's a way of saying that just as my life has always mattered, for too long now, far too long, not all lives have mattered. That Black lives have been devalued and dismissed and broken and incomplete and treated in our culture as not being as worthy as mine. So we need to truly listen and try to understand and to make that wrong right, once and for all. And in striving to make that real, there's so much hope in that. There is salvation in that. Now, one thing Paul makes clear, though, is that what we hope for is a reality that we have not seen yet. Think about that. Sounds kind of weird at first. But if I hope for a chocolate cake for my birthday exactly like my mom used to make, I've seen that cake before. I know what it looks like. I know what it smells like. And I know what it tastes like. It's awesome. At the same time, the cake I'm hoping for, it's not going to be the same cake. It can't be the same. Because in the meantime, between my memory and past experience and now, the earth has circled the sun plenty of times. I've changed. The world around me's changed. Time has marched on, and I have learned some things. I wouldn't even eat that cake in the same way, mostly by not eating as much, hopefully. So what we hope for is something we haven't ever experienced, really. Did you ever see the movie Groundhog Day? One of my favorites. Bill Murray plays a TV weatherman reporting on Punxsutawney Phil. And through a strange and mystical twist, he wakes up every day reliving the day before, Groundhog Day, over and over and over again. At first, he's terribly confused, but then he's delighted that he can change little things just for the fun of it every day, and every day that's really the same day played out all over again. But eventually, he grows very weary of the same thing day after day, and his greatest hope is not to ever have things stay as they have been and just repeat themselves. His hope is for something new he has not experienced before. What he hopes for so dearly is what is unseen. So, what's our unseen hope? I have a few suggestions. That we'll emerge on the other side of COVID, understanding how connected we are as human beings, how interdependent we are. That my well-being and your well-being and the well-being of every human is the responsibility of every human. That's why wearing a face mask around other people is not an infringement on my rights. It's the responsible grown-up thing to do, to safeguard the well-being of others. It's not for my safety, it's for the safety of other people. My hope is that we can learn to count on each other like that and trust each other and have each other's back because we've learned how knit together we are with each other. And that when frightening things happen in our world, we're stronger if we work together. I hope we'll finally grasp the truth that just as a virus does not respect boundaries between nations or people, we're coming closer to living into the reality that barriers of language and ethnicity and race and nationality are illusions we've bought into, at least when humanity is viewed from the big, loving perspective of God. Do you really think God cares more for me because I'm an American and not from Iran? Not really. From that sacred point of view, We are all part of the same family. We're all in the same big boat. And we're all created by the same God. And we should all grow up and start acting like it. My hope that is still unseen is that we will experience the day when a black child born in this country has exactly the same opportunity and freedom from fear and the high esteem bestowed upon them that I have been privileged to enjoy purely by the accident that I happen to be born with white skin. My hope is that we will all understand that our responsibility of caring about each other and for each other inevitably means that we have to stretch our comfort zones, that we have to face up to and deal with our complacency and our complicity, that we understand that we need to seek forgiveness and reconciliation, and that we pledge to do better because it's the right thing, it is the just thing, it is the sacred thing. It's our work now. Today, as we remember and give thanks for the life of John Lewis, the legendary civil rights leader and member of Congress who passed away on Friday, who was beaten and jailed many times, and who did not lose hope in the face of incredible odds and the challenges that still confront us. His hope must be our hope. His work must be our work. And I don't know yet all that work will entail. I don't know yet what all may come. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. At the same time, I still hope for it with all my heart. And that hope can and will mean salvation. Our souls today need it badly. And my hope today is that we, you and me, and this church together, that we will understand our purpose, our reason for being, and our cause is never to be stuck in Groundhog Day. Never to be in an endless loop of just repeating what we've known before and think for a minute that that is the same thing as being faithful. It's not. Our cause is to hope and be the vessels of hope and the instruments of hope. Hope for anyone, any of our neighbors who are broken, weary, frightened, rejected, anyone who's ever thought that being part of a community of faith would never be relevant to their lives. We're proving that wrong. Our hope that's very real, but still unseen, is that together we'll be people who break down barriers, who bind up the wounded, and who welcome the stranger, and who shine and flicker brightly in the darkness, and who know that we are saved not for our own sake, but by being the living lights of healing and wholeness and completeness for others. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.